So today we have to talk about drama, Tennessee Williams drama, A Streetcar Named Desire. Tennessee Williams was born in Columbus, Mississippi on March 26, 1911, a bold and genteel Southern heritage. American South, is something that you must understand what it is. American South, stands for traditions, for a way of life, for Bellreve, 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 and for so many other things, for for it occurs in several of the novels, plays. American South, is that way very important. So when Williams was growing up, is considerable of his time. His grandfather was a clergyman. He grew up strongly in a southern atmosphere. Even though his family worked very much of the time in St. Missouri, William wrote on this move. It was a tragic move. Neither my sister nor I could adjust ourselves in life in a Midwestern city. The family lived in such an apartment as pictured in you could say the streetcar named Desire. William went on to work early to add to the family's meager income, but he did not graduate after scattered periods of 3 different institutions. He worked for 2 years in the shoe factory at St. Louis. Between periods of study in college, he was, during these years, busily writing poems, stories, dramas. So, Glass Menagerie was his first play, successful play, I should say, 1945, and Streetcar Name was published in 1947. And Williams, as you know, has been persistently occupied with the pathos of human failure. Human failure, this is very important. He has centered his attention upon the inner life, the psychology of adjustment necessitated by the impingement of harsher reality upon a tender inner vision of glory. This irrational flight of characters from outward pressures toward the myth nurtured in a complacent seclusion leads them to frustration or insanity. This is what, Thomas E. Porter in his book on myth in modern American drama says. It's sometimes that the Williams view of life is morbid and doesn't have a continuous preoccupation with psychological deviation. Williams' greatness lies in the fact that he talks about ill-adjusted women in society. Ill-adjusted women in society. That's his human failure. Often middle-aged, who remembers the myth of gracious living, but is defeated by the impinging realities of life, of the present. The play has strong autobiographical overtones. The other character, resembles Williams himself and his sister. It's called the memory play. When you look at a piece of Glass Menagerie says, when you look at a delicate piece of crockery, what it's just, it's beautiful and also at the same time very brittle. Brittle means it can be easily broken. So as a dramatist, Williams makes out use of expressionistic technique to depict inner reality. Expression is a dramatic technique which enable the dramatist to depict inner reality of soul or psyche of his personages. When we come to, you know, say this play, A Streetcar Named Desire, William uses many non-realistic devices. Symbolism of the type employed by Ibsen, and Chekhov is found in almost every play, and the titles of his works usually indicate some deeper symbolic meaning. Normally, Williams also demands a fragmentary settings. Although each fragment is usually realistic, frequently his sets combine interiors and exteriors. The sets of setting. That means setting of the play, both interior and exterior, and to allow fluidity without scene of change. A good example of the sound is found in The Summer and Smoke. That's the play that he wrote. Time is also very fluid in Williams' plays, particularly the glass menagerie, especially noteworthy for its use of memory as motivation for calling the scenes from past. In this respect, the play resembles the works of Strindberg. But while Williams' plays may be extremely theatrical, they are intensely real in their treatment of character. Williams is concerned principally with inner psychological realities that can be best projected through the manipulation. Complex Freudian motivations underline most of his plays. Complex Freudian motivation, Freudian. The conflicts in Williams' plays are frequently represented by larger human issues. Spirituality, and materialism are almost always at odds with the resolution of dramatic action. Depends upon how well the characters can reconcile the demands of those two sides of human nature. These two sides of human nature are very important. Spirituality and materialism. Spirituality and materialism. You keep these words in mind. For example, in A Streetcar Named Desire, Blanche is the heroine of the play. Desire for beauty and love are eventually defeated by Stanley Kowalski. Stanley is the second character. Then their third character is Stella, that is sister of Blanche, and the fourth character is Mitch, that is the man with whom she is engaged to be married. And conflict with Kowalski materialisms, some of Williams' plays make a conflict too abstract and allegorical, but in others it is embodied in intensely powerful and lifelike portraits. Williams has been, as I told you, persistently preoccupied with human failure. Human failure is his main thing. He has centered his attention upon his inner life, the psychology of adjustment necessitated by the impingement of harsher reality upon the tender inner vision of glory. This irrational flight of William's characters from the outward pressures toward the myth nurtured in complacent seclusion leads them to frustration, particularly in A Streetcar Named Desire. Ostensibly, it appears that William's attitude to life is morbid. Morbid means pessimistic. Morbid, sad. As he is continuously preoccupied with psychological deviation from a close scrutiny would reveal that there is a good deal of ambivalence in him. Ambivalence means ambiguity. Ambiguity means double meaning, that you could do this and this could be that. The ambivalence is seen in the juxtaposition of comic and serious elements. Like Chekhov, Williams is also able to depict multiple characters and traits and different moods simultaneously. Amanda in the Glass Menagerie, for example, is admirable, pathetic. Amanda is a character, in the Glass Menagerie. She is a mother of the play, she acts as mother of the author, Tom. And she is preoccupied with one thing, that her daughter is not getting married, and brother is not doing anything. ਪੰਜਾਬੀ ਚ ਦੱਸਾਂ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਇੱਕ ਗੱਲ ਕਿ ਜੇ ਭੈਣ ਦਾ ਵਿਆਹ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੁੰਦਾ ਤੇ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਹੈ ਨਾ ਰਿਸਪੌਂਸਿਬਿਲਿਟੀ ਇਜ਼ ਦੈਟ ਆਫ ਦ ਬ੍ਰਦਰ. ਮਦਰ ਇਜ਼ ਪ੍ਰੀਆਕੂਪਾਈਡ ਵਿਦ ਦਿਸ ਕਿ ਭੈਣ ਦਾ ਵਿਆਹ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੋ ਰਿਹਾ, ਤੂੰ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਨਾ ਆਪਣਾ ਕੁਝ ਕਰ ਨਹੀਂ ਰਿਹਾ. This is how it is. Glass menagerie. For example, is admirably pathetic and ridiculous, and scenes in which he appears shifts mood rapidly. Williams' portraits of human limitations in conjunction with his aspirations produce both pathos and humor. His plays consequently are at once compassionate and bitter. These characteristics show both the continuing power of realism and the modification by other approaches. In A Streetcar Named Desire, Williams deals with the idea of a woman coming to terms with life. He deals with the idea of a woman coming to terms with life and shattering the image which is no longer possible in the disintegration of society and the death of the old aristocracy, that is Bellevue, that is Southern inheritance, that is, the tradition, life of tradition. Walcott Gibbs refers to A Streetcar Named Desire as a brilliant, implacable play about the disintegration of a woman, or if you like, of the society. This is disintegration is not of the woman alone, but of society as such. Perhaps it is both. From the moment Blanche de Bois is brought to Alcyon Fields is the place where she goes, to meet her sister Stella and her husband. And in the process, she is raped by her husband, by Stella's husband. Alcyon Fields on the streetcars called Desire and Symmetries. The process of disintegration which had begun in her youth is accelerated. At the opening of the play, 33-year-old Blanche, having lost her youth, her husband, her inheritance, her home, her employment, and nearly all the family, arrives in New Orleans to stay with her sister because she has nowhere else to go. She is taken aback to find that Stella lives in a small, dingy apartment in a slum street in the old part of the town, having married an uncouth automatic parts salesman of Polish origin, that is Stanley Kowalski, whom she met when he was a soldier during the war. In an effort to make a new start, Blanche finds a possible husband from among her brother-in-law's friends. Harold Mitchell is one, called Mitch. But Stanley comes between them. At the end, having been raped by a man of the house in which she sought refuge, her mind unhinges, and she is removed for an indeterminate future to a public asylum. She is sent to asylum at the end of the play. Blanche has come to her sister in a desperate effort to avoid the unavoidable, and she fails. As I told you, Williams is preoccupied with human failure. So she fails. As a sociological play, A Streetcar Named Desire is indebted to Chekhov's Three Sisters. As psychological drama to Strindberg's Miss Julie. Like Chekhov, Williams shows the decline of gentry through the lives of its daughters. Like Strindberg, he combines class and sexual warfare. Of the two sisters who appear in Streetcar Named Desire, the younger is a wife and the elder is a school teacher, as they are in Chekhov. The probable third having died 10 years ago in what Blanche calls that dreadful way. The sexual duel between the underling and the lady ends with the defeat of the latter in both Streetcar Named Desire and Miss Julie. Miss Julie is the play by Strindberg. In the Williams, however, It is not woman so much as the man whose desire is mixed with hostility. Man is also responsible. He becomes hostile. Whereas in Strindberg, Jean aspires to the aristocracy, William's unrefined Stanley would like to destroy it. He takes the same sexual pleasure in degrading Blanche as he has already been pulling Stella down from the columns. Like Jean, who realizes that he still has the soul of a servant when he turns his attention back to the Count's boots, the touchy Stanley bristles at the charge of his being common. But the odds are all in his favor. Strindberg was writing well before the First World War, and Williams just after the Second World War. The ex-master sergeant, is a member of the dynamic working class in post-war industrial Orleans. The jobless widow, this is Du Bois. Jobless widow is a refugee from the collapsed ruling class of the old agrarian South. So, any analysis of a streetcar named Desire must at some point come to grips with one essential query, and that is the question of where the author's sympathies lie, whether they lie with Du Bois, who is raped, or with Stanley, whose life is interference. He doesn't tolerate any interference from any man or woman or outside. So it is deceptively complex query because there is no clearly defined approach. Strongly rooted in the reality of character and environment, and replete with stinging naturalistic detail, this tragedy of a fallen member of the southern landed aristocracy nevertheless abounds in poetic overtones. These are in parts justified. These are in part justified by Blanche's refinement of language. She is well bred and she has sufficient education to have taught school for a while. Her consuming need is to make herself and others constantly aware of her refinement. She is concealing her tawdry past, objectionable past, tawdry past of alcoholism, incontinence, and common prostitution. She has been passing through these stages of life. She is compensating for her fallen estate, her memories being as unbearable as her present circumstances. She must transform both, building a dream world for herself. Obviously, this world contains a large measure of self-delusion. Self-delusion, self-deception. Self-deception means अपने आप को धोखा देना. Self-delusion, as well as good deal of pretentious public behavior. She makes poetry, which her cultural background enables her to activize in the form of manners and to articulate in dialogue. But her refinement betrays her by becoming excessively fastidious rather than natural. Social change has been a process of deterioration in an algebraic view of history. Blanche admits that Stanley may be a sort of man with whom she and Stella should mix their blood now that they no longer have the estate to protect them. Otherwise, they would not have gone so long. The caste system that is there in India is also in America, that you do not, the aristocracy doesn't move, the aristocracy doesn't fall prey or doesn't mix up with the lower classes. Yet the play is a less a lament for the world to which Blanche was born than it's a lament for the dream of it. The myth of the Old South, however, that hovers over streetcar named Desire, is an intimation of the paradise. That, when one is getting old, he can't do anything much. So he is involved in the past. And he always remembers the past. The past seems glorious. And he is lost in the past. This is what happens to Blanche also. The myth of the old south that hovers around is an intimation of the paradise, a dim memory of sheltered case, a revelation of youth and beauty that have waned with the passing years. Adolescent girls' shattered dreams permeate the atmosphere of lyricism and decay amid the faded elegance of French quarters. The French quarters are the place where she stays, where Stella stays, and she is a guest in that house. Fragments of a childlike aspiration to a chaste and timeless love, like that of two innocents who walked into the eternal spring of Eden with either the fear of mortality, nor the shame of desire. It's little wonder that the fabled mansion of Blanche de Bois, made of such stuff as fond dreams are made on, was lost to the realities of death and the fornication. Our sympathies are with Blanche, but the difficulty with her is that she cannot tolerate her sister having settled in a peaceful life. The sister is settled in life, and she cannot tolerate this. Hence, her acquisition of Stanley. Stanley immediately senses Blanche's ambivalent attitude towards him, and when he overhears her tirade against him and her exhortation to Stella to leave him, he realizes that he must fight for his home and this woman and his woman, his wife. He realizes that she is a sinister influence threatening the healthiness of their private relationship. Overabundant in animal health and devoid of tender-mindedness. Overabundant in animal health, and devoid of tender-mindedness. One tender-minded is one who has feeling for others. Stan must try to eject her because she has brought unease, if not disease, into his home. And her sister, Stella, must eject her as an insane accuser of Stan. Otherwise, Stella could not remain with Stan, to whom she is bound by sexuality, love, and economic convenience. Stanley's animal vigor, he is physically very fit, animal vigor, realism, and solid connection to the living present seem at first to contrast favorably with Blanche's neurosis, delusion, धोखा देना अपने आप, and nostalgic relation to the dead past. One is always buried in the past, I should say. Of course, the past is important, but past is not that important. You're always, thinking of what cannot be cured, must be endured. So, seen in the light, he is the defender of earth. Earth means his home, and home against a historical intruder who rather whose rather imperious attitude is defined in her opening sentence with a neighborly Eunice. There is an ambiguity in Blanche's situation. Placed in comparison to Stanley Kowalski, she is also aristocrat who condescends to plebeian. To plebeian means to common man, when she is not usually scorning him. There is a compulsive conduct on her part. Because she must feel superior to her sister's husband. This is compulsive conduct. Sometimes, even when the opposite person is much superior in mental abilities and those things, one feels, the superiority complex. In fact, Adler, there's a psychologist called Adler, he belonged to England at that time. Adler said, that this is, one always is trying to pose. When one is trying to pose what is not, it is not superiority complex, it is inferiority complex. It's his interior, the shallowness of his mind is coming out at that time. So if you are, my students as such, just in the classroom, perhaps you would have enjoyed. I would have seen the glow on your faces, and then I would have changed myself to different kinds of interpretation. So, but what is given is given. So he's a plebeian when she's actually scorning him. So Kowalski, who is a brute animal force, though not completely a fool, possesses animal shrewdness and vitality, which cause Blanche to remark that she thinks it a fitting that Bellevue, the Dubois ancestral home, should finally become a bunch of old papers in the big capable hands. You know. And later she admits that he is not the type that goes for jasmine perfume. He is not the one who will like the perfume. That's a modern way of looking at things. But maybe he is what we need to mix up our blood now that we have lost the Bellevue, that traditional southern plantation period. For Blanche, Bellevue means the old South and its traditions, was a remaining symbol of life and tradition, and she knows in her heart have vanished, yet to which she clings with desperate tenacity. The marriage of Stella and Stanley, based almost exclusively upon sex, is a relationship which both fascinates and horrifies Blanche, although she is seemingly newcomer to the sexual excesses. She says, what such a man has to offer to is animal force, and he gave a wonderful exhibition of that. But only, but the only way to live with such a man is to go to bed with him, and that's your job, not mine. He tells his sister. Williams is obviously presenting her as an intruder. Intruder means one who interferes. Intruder into the crude and normal and uninhibited life of Stanley and Stella. Porter means Thomas E. Porter, who wrote Myth in American Drama. That's a big myth in modern American drama. He has dwelt on success myth. He has dwelt on this myth of the South and other things, in American drama. Williams is obviously presenting her as an intruder. Porter has elaborated on the intruder-imposter motif in the play, which is to be found in the comics tradition. He says, Porter, I'm quoting Porter. Blanche is both heroine and intruder. She rouses sympathy and revulsion in the audience. This double role, along with the modification of a plantation myth, is combination with intruder's pattern, is responsible for the apparent confusion at the heart of the play. What is more, I'm unquote now. What is more, as an intruder brought by precisely the desire to profess, to abhor means to hate, in Stanley and Stella, that is brute animality for as Blanche's illusions and pretensions are remorselessly stripped away by Stanley. That illusions and pretension. You pretend to be great, but you are not. Illusion means one who is living in his own world, world of idealism or world of thought process. A veritable cauldron of filth and decay pours out of the past. Her ambiguity lies in both being attracted to and repelled by Stanley. She is attracted to his physical prowess, you could say, his physical beauty, and also is repelled by his birth, by his low birth. Her attraction is the lure of the flesh, but repulsion is more complex. It's a repulsion with sexuality, which is almost animalistic, but also with the knowledge that this animality was bringing pleasure to her sister. This animality was bringing pleasure to her sister, while she was watching their family and home crumble into decay. Now, what happened, was in the past, the sister, she tells her sister that it was I who faced everything in life. You are having a good life. And she says, I, I took the blows in my face and my body. All those deaths are deaths of the older generation, his father, his mother, and his grandfather, and all that. The long parade of the graveyard. Why? The grim reaper had put up his tent on the doorstep. Stella, Bellerive was the headquarters. Bellerive means the traditional old south. Which of them left us a slipped through my fingers? Which of us left us a fortune? You know, which of which of them means his grandfather, his father, and her father, her grandfather, and both of the which of us left us a fortune? Which of them left a cent of insurance even? Yes, because ultimately one is materialistic. The play is a clash between materialism on the one hand and sexuality on the other. Yes, accuse me, sit there and stare at me, thinking I let the place go. I let the place go means I had sold my house and everything. I let the place go. Where were you? In bed with you? Polak means the Polish, Stanley Kowalski. It is as if magically and symbolically, having lived through the three quarters of the century since Reconstruction. Reconstruction was a period, in American literature when everything was, then roads were being built and all that, Reconstruction was going on. She appeared as a disenfranchised gentlewoman from the aristocratic and pastoral South to suffer her final degradation under the occupation of progressive and industrial North. The difference between South and North. So Kowalski means Stanley, fights Blanche by doggedly rooting into her past, and finally destroying her by opening the past to her suitor, Harold Mitchell. Okay, I have raped her. He tells her lover, Harold Mitchell, that it's I who took the initiative in raping her. Naturally, he tries to let down the woman in the eyes of her man. He justifies his rape of her by acknowledging that she had caused it, and as much as we have had this date with each other from the very beginning. That's what he says. We have. That's what Stanley says. Stanley means the the, the person who Stanley Kowalski is his lover. Lover, his sister's husband. We have had this date with each other from the very beginning. He's a new American, rough, tough, but alive with a sense of his own being and power. So he lectured to Stella on the regal command of the male in the home. In America, it's the male that dominated at that time. An argument for which he cites the authority of Huey Long would appear at least in the light of women's liberation, nearly to outdo Blanche's own delusions and superiority. The premeditated cruelty with which he gives her one-way ticket back to Laurel on her birthday comes from the same childish center as his canine means dog-like howling, for Stella on the poker night. By the time he forces Blanche to bed while his wife is giving birth in the hospital, bestiality and cunning have all but obscured his appealing directness, good humor, and physical well-being. In retrospect, neither his uxoriousness nor his protestation of friendship for Mitch rings true. Stanley's underlying motive for warding off Blanche's only suitor, we are bound to conclude, has been to remove the obstacle in the way of keeping the date that he has had with her from the very beginning. He is quite right in telling her that she accepted the date with him a long time ago. In their first scene together, Blanche regards Stanley's half-naked torso, body, with awe as he changes his t-shirt in front of her. It's because of she because she is torn between attraction and repulsion. That she thinks she is going to be sick. The Vasarvana, this is the Vasarvana means the sexual image. Echoing the guilt she bears for the suicide of her young husband, filters through the dialogue. The agent of her retribution and the price of her rebellion against her genteel background coalesce in the figure of the swaggering Stanley. Sex with her brother-in-law is the culminating event in a long period of sexual indulgence and self-degradation. The brutal encounter, you know, of the bodies of the opposite of the tender, meeting the soul that defines the marriage of Blanche and Ellen Gray. Ellen Gray was her husband. You know. One reason Blanche's rebellion goes to extremes is that it was her sexual innocence, result of her old-fashioned upbringing, that made her incapable of responding to Ellen's half-spoken plea to be saved from homosexuality. She must punish herself for Ellen's death. He committed suicide. She must rebel against the repressive tradition that made her guilty of it. And because she chooses to meet these demands by giving lessons to her body, she must simultaneously punish herself for the betrayal of her soul. Stanley is no ineffectual dreamer like Branch. Rather, what he wants, he gets. This is how he obtained Stella. This is how he obtained Stella. Now he says, this is, I quote, when we first met, me and you thought I was common. You was, baby. I was common as dirt. He showed me the snapshot of the place with the columns. The column is 3-garden house, 4-garden house, 5-garden house in south. This is called columns. I pulled you down off from the columns, and how you loved it, having them colored, lights going. And wasn't we happy together? Wasn't it all okay? Till she showed here, till she came. We were all having good life. Stanley pulled both Stella and Blanche from the columns. Or rather, he administered to Blanche a final swift push. Stella adjusted herself to this brutish normality and thrived. Blanche couldn't and broke down like a twig, tota, takdi, choti, takdi, twig. Ultimately, in spite of her sister's warning and incitement, Stella returns to Stanley, and her return makes a victory, as Joseph Woodcrutch suggested Stella. Lives in the present, she accepts things as they are. This is how Joseph Woodcrutch, would say in his book called Modernism in a Modern American Drama. Modernism in Modern Drama, Ithaca, 1953, page 144. Lives in the present, she accepts things as they are. Her husband is crude, even somewhat brutal, but she is also virile. Virile means he is also sexually responsive. He is a natural man and one of the literature's many kinsmen of Lady Chatterley's Lover. Lady Chatterley's Lover was a novel written by D.H. Lawrence in 1937, which was banned by the British government at that time. Virility means sexual potency. Even orgiastic virility is the proper answer to decadence. Stella, the representative of decayed aristocracy, is rejuvenated by a union with the representative of the people. Elia Kazan, was a critic, who wrote a book called Elia Kazan. I could tell you the book. Elia Kazan, is a notebook of a streetcar named Desire, included and directed the play edited. It was published in by Peter Owen in 1954. So Eliot Kazan, however, does not agree with the primitive and innocent presentation of Stanley. He is marvelously selfish, a miracle of sensual self-centeredness. He is a ruler of his domain, ruling literally as well as figuratively. Leonard Berkman remarks, this intimacy, this Leonard Berkman, was remarks in the tragic downfall of Blanche du Bois' modern drama. That is, he remarks, their intimacy involves a degree of humility, spiritual affection, and a world need, certainly as well as the working out of the pattern of living generally suitable to them both. Nancy Williams, however, not only enriched his muddled his play with the ambiguities, ambivalences. Sometimes these ambiguities are only melodramatically fruitful. He reduced potential tragedy to psychopathology. Blanche's psychological situation, these plays are studies in psychology also. Williams plays are a very good study in psychology. Blanche's psychological situation is already so untenable when she enters the home of Stan and Stella that she should be receiving psychiatric care. At that time, she should be receiving she should consult the psychiatrist and care, get some physical care. Williams, moreover, muddled the social basis of Blanche's drama which he himself underscored with reference to her southern plantation. It is true that the aristocratic family's fortunes declined and left her economically insecure, but she could have supported herself honorably as a teacher had she not become a victim of neurosis. There are men and women, boys and girls both, who are neurotic in their attitude. Their solution lies in being right thinking, but they are sidetracked. So neurosis is one disease, which diverts the mind, to sex, to other things. So she is she she is insecure and supported herself honorably as a teacher and not and become a victim of neurosis. In fact, her disintegration began long before her clash with Stanley Kowalski. The process started with the death of her young husband, a weak and perverted boy who committed suicide when she taunted him with her disgust at the discovery of his perversion. What was his perversion? His perverted behavior, his homosexuality. In retrospect, she knows that he was the only man she had ever loved. And she said there, he was a boy, just a boy when I was a very young girl. When I was 16, I made the discovery, love. All at once and much, too completely. It was like you suddenly turned a blinding light on something that had always been half in shadow. That's how it struck the world for me. And then the searchlight, which had been turned on the world, was turned off again, and never for a moment since has there been any light that is stronger than this kitchen candle. Unquote. And from this early catastrophe, there are intimacies with strangers, which all I seemed able to fill my heart with. That's what she says. I am in love with the strangers. I think it was panic, just panic, that drove me from one to another. That's in panic situation. What happened? One is not clear in his thing. One's thinking is muddled. Muddled means confused. Muddled means confused. Then his thinking, when thinking becomes confused, then you do not know what to make it the right choice. The right choice you do not make. Haunting for some protection. Blanche attempts to fight loneliness with sex. Her plight is attributed. The theme of loneliness is there in William's plays. Glass menagerie is there and other places. Loneliness with sex. Her plight is attributed by Williams to bizarre circumstances that her husband killed her after realizing that he was hopeless and homosexual. As daughter of a southern cherry orchard family, she she might have become quite credibly ill-adjusted to reality by over-refinement and pride. But Williams, unsatisfied with normal motivations, adds the causative factors of marriage to a homosexual, which has not been established as inevitable. Nor is it convincing that the young husband's death should have led her to seduce children and take up soldiers in a neighboring camp. Blanche knows it fully well that she is misfit in an alien world, and yet she will not compromise. She cannot and will not surrender the dream she has of herself. And even though she wants desperately not to be lonely, it's precisely the clinging to life, clinging to this dream, the airs, mannerisms, which alienate her further. She is trapped in a terrifying contradiction. This is contradiction in life, that either you choose this or that. Her need to be special, to adhere to codes and a tradition no longer valid, creates an intense isolation, while simultaneously her desire not to be alone, to be loved, threatened to break through this isolation. If Blanche is both, is a moth woman is a woman who who consumes herself. Moth eaten, you know, moth, very white antelope. If Blanche is a moth woman in the tradition of Laura Wingfield, she is also a tigress. There's another important aspect to it. There's a fierce desire in her for life at all costs. In her masculinity of it is a defense against the world as well as against herself. It's clawing, desperate defense, and it is also lasting one. This too she recognizes, and she says, when people are soft people have got a shimmer and a glow. There's soft people have a shimmer and a glow on their faces. They have got to put up soft colors, the colors of butterfly wings, and put paper lantern over the light. Soft people, they try to lead an artistic life. It's the failure of the artist in Blanche, that she wants to cover all lights with her shades and all that. Paper lantern over the light, it's not enough to be soft and detective, and I'm fading now. I don't know how much longer I can turn the trick. How can I? How do I know that I will be successful or I will not be successful? This is very important for you. So that's the aware. Thus, she's aware. Blanche is aware of the fact that she is concealing her wrinkles by shading the naked bulbs and paper lanterns, and her drinking by insisting that she really touches it. She pretends that she doesn't touch the drink, but she's out, when she takes one pack, touches it, and her isolation by recalling the Shep Huntleys, to whom she can appeal whenever disaster brushes too close. So as a human being, Blanche is pitiable. She's not aggressive at all. She's pretty tigress. She's not a tigress. She's pitiable. Especially when we understand that her past history, which has made her of what she is. But as visitor to the house of Stan and Stella, she stands for evil. And she brings evil to everyone she touches. Particularly obnoxious is her ingrown and perverted delicacy. Perverted version, you understand. Which contrasts strongly with Stan's hard drinking, profane, vulgar, but basically healthy attitude towards life. In the romance with Harold Mitchell, she finds another sensitive, lonely person who needs tenderness and love as much as she does. Mitchell, Harold Mitchell, Mitch too has loved and lost a girl who died, a very strange girl, very sweet, very this and that. And that two castaways, Blanche and Mitch, drift towards each other and cling desperately. But he is the last remnant of our ideal, last remnant of our ideal. आखिरी निशानी of the other situation, othership, ideal. Big and clumsy, Mitch is caricature of the southern gentleman. Caricature, you understand? A poor copy is called caricature. Caricature on the poor copy. Caricature of the gentleman. He is good and he is kind, and he sees Blanche something Stanley can never see. The true quality of a lady, incongruous as their relationship seems, it can work. Mitch needs Blanche as desperately as she needs him. He is bound to his mother in a love-hate relationship. That is splitting them apart, bound to his mother in a love-hate relationship. Sometimes human relations are such that you can't leave it and you can't love it. Leave and loving, they are part of life. Blanche seems flawless to him, and this is as it must be for the sake of his mother. Still, he must struggle with himself to keep his hands from her. He has been kept the dependent boy by his mother. He is unable to face his half-realized needs. In the relationship with Blanche, he finds her for the first time, a person who needs him. But Blanche has lied too much. No, ਬੰਦਾ ਇਲੂਜਨ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਕਾਫੀ ਕੁਝ ਬੋਲ ਜਾਂਦਾ ਜਦੋਂ ਬੋਲਦਾ ਬੰਦਾ ਉਦੋਂ ਕਿਹੜਾ ਝੂਠ ਹੀ ਚੱਲਣ ਨਾਲ ਚੱਲਦਾ ਜਦੋਂ ਝੂਠ ਨਾਲ ਚੱਲਦਾ ਝੂਠ ਐਕਸਪੋਜ਼ ਹੁੰਦਾ ਤਾਂ ਫਿਰ ਬੰਦਾ ਆਪਣੇ ਆਪ ਰਿਐਲਿਟੀ ਵੱਲ ਆਉਂਦਾ ਦਿਸ ਇਜ਼ ਵੈਰੀ ਇੰਪੋਰਟੈਂਟ ਆਈ ਸਪੋਕਨ ਟੂ ਯੂ ਇਨ ਪੰਜਾਬੀ so as you understand what it is. Which is not to withstand the truth. His sole opportunity is to save himself, that he is shattered. And when he tells Blanche she is not fit to bring into the house of his mother, she is not fit to be brought to the house of the mother, he has destroyed himself as well as her. The man who falls in love with Blanche is the same gentleman caller in the glass menagerie, with whom Amanda crippled daughters fell in love. So this is how, in Glass Menagerie, there are only three characters: Tom, Amanda, and her this daughter. Amanda as his daughter, and both of, as I told you, the nutshell summary is कि माँ कहती है हमेशा कि मेरे अपने पुत्र ਨੂੰ ਕੰਪਲੇਂਟ ਕਰਦੇ ਆ ਕਿ ਤੇਰੀ ਭੈਣ ਦਾ ਵਿਆਹ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੋਇਆ ਤੂੰ ਕੀ ਕਰ ਰਿਹਾ ਤੂੰ ਕੁਝ ਨਹੀਂ ਕਰ ਰਿਹਾ ਬਸ that's the behavior. Besides helping to define character, drinking, like the two card games, celebrates victory or registers defeat in the struggle between Blanche and Stanley. Stanley's reduction to a state of whimpering dependence in scene 3 follows the drunken rage. Blanche's reduction to a state of helpless inertia in scene 10 follows her drunken histrionics. After Mitch leaves, having refused to make the symbolic southern comfort with her, Blanche dresses for the part of the main attraction at an imaginary drunken revel. Upon his return, Stanley opens the bottle of a beer between his thighs so that the Tsatsy rain from heaven gushes forth with the phallic suggestiveness. Phallic means, sexual overtones it has. Blanche declines his offer of a loving cup and uses a broken bottle as a weapon in her last defense, thereby extending the proper significance at the culmination of the sexual duel. Duel means sexual match. Stanley's rape of Blanche has been seen by many critics as the lurid touch of sensationalism on the part of Williams. The rape on the night of Stella gives birth to a child in a hospital is unbearably brutal, but dramatically essential. Stella is life and Blanche is death. And sex, which can create new life, can also destroy the delicate balance that drive Blanche to insanity. Blanche is a pathetic victim who defends from emotional shock to Hold'em. Hold'em means to prostitution. And finally, to mortal decay. Even after this detailed discussion of Blanche's character and how, you know, the nature of ambiguity in Streetcar named Desire, the fundamental question remains with whom the author sympathy lies. In the early scenes, he tends to share Stanley's fury with affections of Blanche and suddenly finds his sympathy switching exclusively to Blanche because Stanley seems too courageously cruel when he tells her fancy, her last hope in life, that she has at one time been a prostitute herself. But William's own remarks about the play, watch out, or the apes will take over the world. Apes mean one who copies, one like Bandar. Apes means monkeys. Have often been used to make Stanley the villain of the piece. The truth is that the play is as ambiguous in the last sense, in the best sense. William sympathizes with both of his characters, but his feeling for Blanche is one of pity, and for Stanley something nearer to fascinated admiration. It is the same conclusion as in the glass menagerie in which Laura suffers pitiable, but Tom's determination to go out into the world to live right have, even though it increases Laura's suffering. So, this is how it is. Anything that you have not understood, you are most welcome to ask, please. So I have tried to explain. I wrote a book called Perspectives on Western Drama when I was a professor of English. I was a reader in English at that time in 1983. And out of that book, I have spoken certain things to you. Perspectives of Western Drama, in which there are two articles on Tennessee Williams. One is on glass menagerie, the other is on a streetcar named Desire. Yes, you are most welcome to ask any questions if you like. Mansa, Surjit, Mohanjit, Falguni, Suloni, Sukhi, and four others. Yes, any questions, please. You are most welcome to ask. Have you understood the play? Have you read the summary of the play or the full play as such or not? Kindly let me know. If you have not read the play, please read it, because it's very essential. Before going to the examination center, you must read the play and then enjoy it also. Not that it is to be read only, it's also to be enjoyed. That's very essential for you. Anything else that you want me to discuss with you? You are most welcome, please. Mythology plays a great role in this play. The myth of this house, is called the plantation myth. Plantations were the 6-column or 8-column houses that people had in those days. में अपने जगीरदारी सिस्टम्स थी ना, जगीरदारी सिस्टम में बड़े बड़े हाउसेस थे, बान वखरा, तूड़ी का वखरा कमरा, फलाने का वखरा कमरा, मैनेजर्स हो रहे हैं, this and this. It's a beautiful portrayal of this comes in a novel by Faulkner called The Sound and the Fury. I did some work on that when I was active in life.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
I take your leave now.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, beta.